Thanks for joining us for the 4 o'clock news and politics show. As we do every Thursday, kick off with former state representative, former deputy secretary of state, now head of Stages of Freedom, Ray Rickman, who comes into the studio to give his big view.
Thank you, Kate. I watched Nancy Pelosi 8 hours. She had 4.5-inch high heels on, and she stood there on the floor of the House and she talked about the dreamers. 800,000 people, young people, children, who came to America as children with their parents. Parents came illegally over the border and brought their 5-year-old, 2-year-old, 12-year-old, who's now 22 years old or 12 years old, and they wish to stay in America. They're all in school, they're in college, they're working, whatever they're doing. They run the gamut, 99% of them good citizens, good human beings. And the Trump administration and Speaker of the House, Ryan, refusing to really firmly agree that they can stay. Now, when you're 24 years old, you can stay without your parents if you have to. When you're 14, maybe you have an aunt, who knows. But think about a 2-year-old who's never lived in Guatemala, never lived in Nigeria, never lived in Estonia, ever, and has few, if any, connections. And they've got to go home. I put that home in quotes. It's dreadful if you think about it. 71% of the American people are in favor of the dreamers staying. So what's the problem? What is the problem? It's indefensible. Every time I talk about this subject, I try to remind people of something very interesting. Before 1913, you came to America, you came on a boat. If you were lucky, you had a factory owner in Woonsocket someplace who had agreed to hire you. And if not you, you were connected to someone who got workers for them. Most of the factory workers were Anglo-Saxons who'd been here for 150, 200 years. And they were bringing in Irish people, Italian people, Portuguese, and not on the boats, but otherwise French Canadians to work in the factories. And all you had to do was pass the health test, really. You didn't have to speak English. 90% of French Canadians did not speak English. 80% of Italians did not speak English. You listening? And they got to come to America. And there really were almost no test. And 99% of them turned into respectable human beings. And you, the son, the daughter, and grandchildren of those people, probably respectable. Do you hear me pause? Can you hear me pause? Here's a state of Rhode Island with all of these immigrants and children of immigrants. And there are people opposed to children of people who are illegal. Now, after 1913, about a third, and I won't name the ethnic groups, I don't want to get controversial, about a third of most of the ethnic groups I'm talking about still came illegally. Into New Bedford, you guess who I'm talking about. Into New Jersey, you guess who I'm talking about. Down from Canada, you guess who I'm talking about. A third still came illegally as late as the 1960s. And right now in Boston, there are Irish nannies who've overstayed their vacation, visa, green card. How can we be having this discussion about children who came to America illegally? How can anybody whose grandparents came illegally and probably didn't speak English be having this discussion? Finally, almost all of these dreamers are helpful to the society. Helpful. And part of the society. Almost as much as me. My family came to America, we believe, pre-1701. We have a gravestone in northern Tennessee. Rickman, slave, 1701. So I've been here longer than most of the people complaining This is my America, and I'm willing to share it.